talking Payoneer, net spin, Venmo stash. Too many ways for you to run my cash.
Check reparations, 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 check.
Yeah, well if you talking compensation, it's about that time. You get everybody.
Aw, yiggity. And we back in the higgity. It is the keep it be biggity, baby. Listen, man, I'm sick of people trying to tell me and my people what to do. Sick of it. So it says, as a nation celebrates Juneteenth, it's time to get rid of these three myths about slavery. Is it now? Let's see what you got for me. It says, hold on, let me blow this up. You know I'm old now. You know my eyes is bad now.
My catarrh is there, boy.
You know now, my retinas. Temple Cummins stoically stares at the camera with her arms folded in her lap, sitting stiffly in a chair in her dusty, barren backyard with her weather-beaten wooden shack behind her. Her dark, creased face reflects years of poverty and worry. The faded black and white image of Cummings and from the 1937 was snapped by a historian who stopped by her home in Jasper, Texas, to ask her about her childhood during slavery. Cummings, who did not know her exact age, shared stories of interpreted woe until she recounted how she and her mother discovered that they had been freed. She said that her mother, a cook for the former slave owners' family, liked to hide in the chimney corner and the eavesdrop on the dinner conversation. And one day in 1865, she overheard her owners say that slavery had ended, but she wasn't going to let the slaves know until they harvested another crop or two. Don't that
Mm.
don't that sound like Kamala Harris when they was fighting them fires and she wanted to keep the dudes in jail? Sounds just like Kamala Harris, don't it?
Boom.
When Mother heard that, and she slipped out of the chimney corner and cracked her heels together 4 times and shouted, "Eyes free, eyes free." Coming told the historian who recorded. No, I don't. Yeah, I'm just letting it roll. I'm gonna
She
let it
did
roll
the
right now.
Dorothy P.
She didn't do the old leprechaun.
Huh.
She
Ruby
did.
Slippered P.
Did she do the leprechaun, fam? She clicked her heels 4 times. No, she
Huh.
didn't. Well, maybe they did. Hold up.
Is that where the Dorothy got it from? Is that where they took it from, the Wizard of Oz, P? Ain't this
Mm.
before the Wizard of Oz? So is that where they took the click your
Mm.
heels from?
Mm. Good question. It goes on to say Cummins told the historian who recorded her story for a dual writers project that collected the narratives of formerly enslaved people during the Great Depression. She runs into the field against the master's will and told all the slaves that they can quit work. The story is one of the first recorded memories of an experience that would inspire the creation of Juneteenth and the annual holiday celebrated at the end of slavery, with the U.S. will become the commemorative of this Monday. It marks the moment in June of 1865 when the Union troops arrived in Texas to inform the enslaved African Americans that they were free as of executive decree, and many people like Cummings in the remote areas of Texas and elsewhere didn't know that they were free from their white owners because they hid the news. So Juneteenth has become known as America's second Independence Day. That's why people are so mad. Now the federal holiday, which is going to be bigger than 4th of July, is celebrated by parades, proclamations, and ceremonies throughout the U.S., and it commemorates the moment when enslaved African Americans were freed. The U.S. is still held captive by the myth that slavery and people like Cummings. Hold on. The U.S. is still held captive by myths about slavery and people like Cummings. What do you mean held captive? Mean? What do you mean?
Man, if you so captive, you just cut the check so
That's
you
what
can
I'm
get
saying.
free.
Pay what you owe. How about that? Break those chains. Just get them all off. Get it off your chest. Dang.
Liberate yourself.
Telling you, one of the biggest myths that historians and storytellers have successfully challenged in the years is that enslaved Africans were docile, passive victims who had to wait until white abolitionists, the great emancipators, Abraham Lincoln, freed them. Black soldiers, for example, played a pivotal role in winning the Civil War. The new understanding of slavery has led to a historical shift. It is no longer proper to refer to people like Cummins as simply slaves. There's been a shift in the historical community attempting to not define the period of people by what was done to them, but the sense of their identity and become a noun, a slave, but rather than that they were in the process of being enslaved, says Tobin Miller Shearer, a historian director of African American Studies at the University of Montana. And I quote, they were slaves who did that. They were slavers who did that to them, he says, but there were more to the identity than it was being done to them. Yet other myths about slavery persist in part because the other sheer immorality and brutality of slavery, the enslavement of estimated tens of millions of African over a period of almost 4 centuries in the Atlantic slave trade was just a tragedy of such scope that it is difficult to imagine, much less comprehend. Albert J. Ruto
Oh,
wrote
million P.
over 10 million. He said 10 million people over 4 centuries.
So for 400 years.
It was way more than 10 million people, I'm sure. Myth number one.
How you get, fam, how you get 10 million people over here, P?
They didn't.
On boats?
They didn't.
Don't
They be
some of them die?
Dude, they would still be bringing boats over here right now to get to 10 million people, fam.
Come on, fam. That don't even make sense.
Dude, you
You
can't even.
just told us we was already here, P. You just
Mhm.
said some folks came over on boats and was free, P. You just said that. You just traced my man's lineage back, Victor Blackwell, and you just said that they had land. You just said they could read. I thought you said slaves couldn't
They
read. They
was
didn't
look,
understand
look.
English. They
They
from
was filing
Africa.
lawsuits.
Filing lawsuits at the courthouse.
I'm saying, would you can't have it both ways, fam. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It says Smith unearthed the narrative of a woman named Susan Merritt of Rusk County, Texas, who recounted that what happened with some people like Cummins in Texas that tried to claim their freedom. Lots of Negroes were killed after freedom, bushwhacked, shut down while they were trying to get away. Shot down while they were trying to get away. You could see lots of Negroes hanging from trees in Sabin Bottom right there after the freedom. They would catch them swimming across the Sabin River and shoot them. Mm.
I thought you said she clicked her heels after coming out of the cubby hole, clicked her heels 4 times and said, Lord Almighty, I'm free at last. And then she ran out into the whoop against the slave master's wishes and yelled it out to all the other slaves, and nobody did nothing. Why they didn't shoot her?
Mm. Now, there was a practice of taking away black freedom through other means, like convict leasing programs and corrupt justice systems throughout the South. A historical black historian Douglas J. Blackman accounted in his Slavery by Another Name. It says the lessons from slavery.
Fam,
Slavery. Hmm?
fam, fam. The last story was Blackwell. We talking about slavery, Blackwell. Now
Mm.
you went and got black men?
Yeah.
Okay, continue, sir.
It says myth number two. Enslaved Africans came to America without any culture or civilization. Yeah, that's a myth. They're talking about images of half naked Africans stumbling into America's shores, blah, 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 blah. We already know what y'all think about that. Number three, enslaved Africans were brainwashed by white man's pie in the sky Christianity. Well, wait a minute.
Hold on now.
I gotta see what they're saying on this. In the Museum of the Bible in Washington, there is a special exhibit of an artifact that is so rare that there are only a handful of now in existence. It is what is historians call a slave Bible. It is a copy of a Bible that was used to British missionaries to convert enslaved African Americans. Published in 1807, the Bible deletes any passages that may inspire liberation. About 90% of the Old Testament, is missing, along with half of the New Testament. They literally blacked out portions of the Bible that had anything to do with freedom, anything to do with equality, anything to do with God delivering folk, he says. The theology professor said from California. There is a misconception that Christianity was successfully used to create docile slaves who were conditioned to heed the New Testament passage, such as slaves obey your earthly masters, Malcolm X declared. Christianity as a white man's religion used to brainwash black people to shout and sing and pray until we die for some dreamy heaven in the hereafter, while the white man has his milk and honey in the streets paved with gold right here on earth. But historians like Harris say most slaves disdained that type of Christianity and that was taught to them. Many instead discovered those missing passages in the slave Bible, such as the Old Testament of God fearing Israelites from Egyptian capacity. It was no accident that many black leaders who led freedom struggles, from Nat Turner to Reverend Martin Luther King, were Christian ministers. Instead of Christianity being a religion of African oppression, many interpreted it as a religion of freedom, Harris said. But wait a minute. I'm a little confused. How did they get access to the other Bible? If they took all of that out and they say, like, well, okay, so they had the slave Bible the whole time until what? After slavery was over, and then they got a hold of the real Bible and then start finding the other passages that they could have used while they was in slavery for their empowerment? Is that what I'm getting?
I got one even better.
Come on.
I thought they couldn't read and write, so how'd they read the slave Bible?
Well, did you see A Birth of a Nation and Nat Turner joint?
You know I ain't.
Okay, Birth of a Nation, Nat Turner movie was good. And the movie was Nat Turner was a preacher on the plantation. And they would pick one nigga out that they would teach how to read and give him the book to read them scriptures to them. That's what Nat Turner was. So not everybody could read, but the slave owners would gather all of their little slaves up and put and make church and sit there and watch him in church while he read, like they said, those passages like obey your slave masters and the hereafter and all of that. That's what it depicted in the movie. So one person could read, and a matter of fact, they used to take um, Birth of a Nation. What's up? I forgot what I just said his name was. Nat Turner. They used to take the slave owner that owned Nat Turner used to take him around to different plantations for Nat Turner to preach to the other plantation and the other slaves when they wasn't acting right. That was his job in the movie. And then what happened was they little white, I think it was like they little white daughter or something was kind of feeding him the other knowledge. And then that's what he started to rebel on. Like the other passages he started to get.
Oh, here
He
we
got
go. The Great White Hope.
well, yeah, yeah.
If it
But
wasn't for her
what giving
feeding him the other knowledge, he would still be lost.
yeah, so I didn't even see that, but you're right. It was something like that. And don't quote me on that if that's not exactly how the movie went. But I'm trying to make sense of it now that they actually explained that there was two different Bibles. And I'm like, okay. No, no, no. Actually, that makes a lot of sense because they was paying him to go around to read the slave Bible, and the slave Bible didn't have the revolt stuff in it. But he had got that knowledge from, like you say, the white savior in the movie. I think that's how it went. It says That's a question that no holiday celebration can answer, but one historical debate has been settled. Even if the stories of the formerly enslaved are forgotten by history, we live in a contemporary America that is profoundly shaped by how it resisted the cat. Now, hold on. What you mean, even if? What you mean? Who said anything about forgetting anything?
Right.
See, that's what they want to leave you with. That's how they want to, even if you guys forget about it. Like, how?
Right.
They just
Let's
can't
just
resist.
forgive and forget the whole thing. It ever happened.
Hmm.
Yeah, as soon as you cut that check.
Listen, I ain't going to hold you, but I'm going to hold you for just coach about being on code. And you should know what you're celebrating and what you're celebrating it for. I need you to go ahead and share this to all the people that need to see it. Comment your vomit, like for the spike, subscribe if you're live. This is where you share that. Don't be scared of that. Don't be a scaredy cat. You know what I'm saying? And I got 4 words for you: love, blessings, and aloha.